Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the last session of the day. This also happens to conclude REFCOLD 2020 conference. I'm sure you all would be eagerly waiting to listen to the best of the industry on the panel discussion that we are going to have right now. How strong a cold chain helps the marine and the horticulture produce. For those who have just joined, I'm Nilanjana Mukherjee from Kolkata chapter, and I will be taking you through this panel discussion and also will be concluding the event today. Now, without wasting any time, let me straight away take you to the esteemed panel members and our esteemed moderator. The moderator of the session on how a strong cold chain helps exports of horticulture and marine produce is none other than the industry legend, Shri Arvind Surange. He is the CMD of ACR Project Consultants Private Limited. Having done his master's in air conditioning and refrigeration from IIT Roorkee, he further completed an advanced training in Germany and Denmark in refrigeration and cold chain projects. He introduced the concept of green cold chain on a global scale. Apart from being the president of ISHRAE, he has served as president of ASHRAE Western India chapter, and amongst the many awards that he has won, he is also fellow ASHRAE and received ISHRAE Lifetime Service Award, Brier and Emerson Award, and many more. Our panelists of the day are also very, very well renowned and industry doyens. The next member in the panel is Mr. Pankaj Mehta, and he is very, very well known already to everybody who's present. He's the Managing Director of Carrier Transicold India and South Asia, including Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and Maldives. He has over 29 years of rich work experience and is a highly qualified engineer with a Bachelor of Technology in Mechanical Engineering, Bachelor of Science, and a Master's in Marketing Management from Mumbai University. Co-chairman of the National Task Force on Post-Harvest and Logistics set up by Confederation of Indian Industries, CII, in association with Ministries of Agriculture and Food Processing to stimulate the cold chain infrastructure development. He is a member of the CII National Council on Agriculture and member of Governing Council CII Food and Agriculture Center of Excellence, FACE. He is a member of CII National Committee on Food Processing and member of the CII Committee on Logistics and Supply Chain. He was awarded the ICE Award 2011 by the Global Cold Chain Alliance. We welcome you, Pankaj sir, for the panel discussion. The next member on the panel is Mr. Krishna Nagahari. He is also very, very well known in ISHRAE. He's a supporter of ISHRAE, leads the industry affairs and regional hotspots business at Danfoss, India. He's a member of the CII National Task Force on Cold Chain, CII Energy Efficiency Council, member of the Bureau of Indian Standards Mechanical Engineering Committee, member of the ASHRAE Hall of Fame jury. He is a member of the National Task Force on Cold Chain, CII Energy Efficiency Council, member of the Bureau of Indian Standards Mechanical Engineering Committee, member of the ASHRAE Hall of Fame jury. We welcome you, Krishna sir. And it is very interesting to note that both Pankaj sir and Krishna sir are having the army background. And it is great to have both of you for this panel discussion today. And last but not the least, our another very esteemed panel member here today is Mr. Satish Guttikonda. He is CEO of Nekkanti Seafoods. He's a BTech from IIT Madras and has done MBA from Cornell University. Experience in diverse industries like insurance, food processing, and healthcare sectors. He has worked with global giants like Deloitte, Goldman Sachs, and Liberty Mutual. His core area of expertise includes strategic planning, operations management, and sales operations. This is our esteemed panel today, and as introduced earlier, our moderator is going to be Arvind Surange sir. Sir, I would now hand over the mic and the proceedings to you. Well, the chat box is going to have a link where we can have the live questions coming up from all of you. And if anything you want to add up, any comment, any questions for our esteemed panel, please put it on the chat box. We will try to take it from time to time, and we will try to answer all questions.
Okay.
Over to you, Surange sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Nilanjana, for the introductions of all the members. Friends, namaskar, and welcome to this very special session on the cold chain. Well, cold chain, is something like a lifeline for us, for modern society. In India, we term cold chain as a sunrise sector, and very rightly so. Because India is one of the top ranking countries in terms of food production, especially the perishable food production. We already touched a figure of 500 million metric tons. Well, our production of the fruit and vegetable sector, and this I must tell you especially because this is very recent news, the production of fruit and vegetable sector has surpassed the production of the grains and cereals. This was the first time this has happened. Well, we should really stand tall because we are number one globally in the dairy sector. We are number two in fruits and vegetables. And we are fairly top ranking in the production of the fish, meat, and poultry sector. Add to that the ready-to-eat products and also the pharma, which has come into limelight because of this COVID issue. Well, we are already doing our bit in developing the cold chain. We have support from the government. But what we really need is a strong cold chain. That is the term given by the organizers here, a strong cold chain. What I mean by that is a technologically advanced, energy efficient, sustainable and smart cold chain. That is what the need of the hour for our country. Because if we can develop that kind of a cold chain in the country, we can hope to be a global food hub, and we can have a major share of food exports from our country. And I'm quite sure that we'll be able to achieve that very soon. Well, we have a panel of experts from various spectrums of industry in this panel. And I'm going to request them one by one to share their views and their experiences about the topics. Actually, I'm not going to put questions. I'm going to suggest some topics for discussion. I will start with Mr. Pankaj Mehta, who is MD of Carrier Transicold, and I know him as an expert in the food cold chain and the reefer transport, especially because whenever I think of reefer transport, the first name that comes to me is Pankaj Mehta. So we have Pankaj with us, and I would suggest him to talk on as to how do you see the current scenario in the cold chain sector, especially with reference to the reefer transport. Of course, you can always cover the current status in terms of other food products and all, and how we are going to develop our capacities. There are two questions in this, are two topics, I would say, in the first round. I'm going to propose two rounds here. So in the first round, this is one topic. And the other is, what do you think about the estimated target of 60,000 reefer vehicles? This target was suggested by NCCD based on some statistics. And they also said that we just have about 9 or 10,000 vehicles. So how are we going to achieve this target? How soon and how? So over to Pankaj.
Thank you, Mr. Surange. Hi, good morning, everyone. So Coming to the, I think this is a very relevant topic and a good topic to end this excellent event of REFCOLD India. Uh, I think the need for a strong cold chain has never been so evident as we have today. We hear, if you just see the news of the last few months, even during lockdown, couple of things come to mind. One is, even during the peak of lockdown, essential services of food and medicines never stopped. We were never at a loss of getting our food supplies, our dairy products, our milk never stopped coming to our doorstep. Our medicines, our chemists were never out of stock. So, and all that largely moves by the cold chain. So I think it is so evident how this is still functioning as a smooth machinery. Another thing that we would have noticed was couple of initiatives by the government, the agricultural reforms, which are enabling the farmers to reach out directly to customers today. Now that again, because of the lockdown situation, we saw many farmers, many villages around cities coming directly in tempos and selling outside our societies. We hear many times of farmer distress. We hear of food wastage. Food wastage is a thing that has been hitting our country for a very long time. On one side we hear of food wastage, the other side we see a lot of imported fruit coming into the country. We see our own excellent fruits, say from mango from Maharashtra not going to Delhi, the lychee from Patna not reaching other parts of the country. So there is so much of a paradox in this country, and I think cold chain is one enabler that can solve or at least minimize a lot of these paradoxes. So, coming to your point on the estimates given by NCCD, now you should see this not in isolation of only reefer trucks. 60,000 reefer trucks, I think, was the estimate done by a study maybe 4 to 5 years back. But view this as a complete chain. The cold chain needs an entry point, it needs an exit point. The entry point, ideally for fruits and vegetables, has to be pack houses at the farm gate at the village level, where the commodity is sorted, graded, packed, made ready to be sent to a distant market. And depending on the quality, this is decided whether it can make the journey to a distant market or it needs to be consumed in the neighborhood market. It needs to be sold, it needs to be processed. So that is, I think, the first point of the journey. And based on what decision is taken, how it is packed, then it moves from the pack house to a pre-cooling chamber, to reefer transport onwards to the final destination, whichever city, whichever market it goes to. So I think the estimate was based on certain assumptions that India needs certain kind of infrastructure. So many thousand pack houses, each pack house would need to cater to so many reefer trucks to connect to so many markets. So I think that was a very detailed study done by the National Center of Cold Chain Development, and it envisaged how the situation, what is the supply chain required for the fruits and vegetables to transit from the farm to the markets. So that is my take on it. I think it was, and there are many subsequent initiatives also done. There is a government initiative on GRAM, that is Gramin Agri Markets, that have been planned to convert your traditional markets into these pack house kind of facilities. Maybe also have a small cold storage facility where the farmer. So all this will enable the farmer to take a informed decision, not do a distress sale. Today, the problem with the farmer is that if he doesn't sell, he is taking a risk of the product getting wasted or spoiled. So if he can buy time, if he can store it, if he can hold the decision for some time and then take a better informed decision, I think that's a very important point. To give you an example, Carrier did a study with a particular commodity called kinu in Punjab. Now, this again was a typical case of the kinu being available only to the neighborhood Punjab market, or maximum it used to come down to Delhi. And then when we asked them, they said wastage is high. It can't make the journey to other parts of the country because the central India temperatures used to go very high soon after the kinu harvest. And so we worked with the farmers. We helped them set up the protocols, have pre-cooling facility, have the correct packaging, and we were able to showcase how the fruit could reach Chennai and Bangalore markets. And that was, I think, a excellent example of a win-win case. Today the farmers there are very enlightened, enabled. They are exporting, they are pre-cooling this and sending it to all over the country, and also exporting the fruit. So I think that is just a small example of how the cold chain can make a difference. Back to you, Suranga sir.
Thank you, Pankaj. Well, a few issues come out of that is what is the current status on our cold storage capacity, and what is the current status on the food processing capacity? Because this food processing, which means production of frozen foods, basically, because we have two types of food exports. One is the products which come through the pack houses, and the other which are come from the frozen food industry. So about the pack houses, you already mentioned. There is an estimate of about 70,000, whereas we just have about 1,000 so far. The growth is on actually, but at a very slow pace. But as far as the food processing is concerned, I can see some projects coming up in the last 2 or 3 years. But then that's not enough, because we are just touching about 5% of our food production as far as frozen food is concerned. But as far as cold store capacity is concerned, I think we have the largest cold store capacity globally speaking. We have more than the capacity that US has today. But our main issue is about the quality of our product. That is what I have seen of my experience of more than 5.5 decades now, that almost 2/3 of our units, cold store units, are based on old and outdated technology. So I think if we want to really focus on exports, first of all, we have to make a proper estimate of what is the additional capacity requirement, the cold stores, and how to modernize our units, because that's very essential. Because when you think of exports of a certain item, certain standards have to be followed in terms of quality, the hygiene, and everything. So, what's your take on that? Can you just give your views on that?
So I think that's a very relevant point. I mean, as you introduced in the beginning of the session, we are surpassing our production capacities. Okay, fruits and vegetables have surpassed even the staples. There is a huge opportunity of India being the food basket of the world. We have a very marginal take in the global food industry. As you said, we don't process enough. I think the problem probably needs to be looked at specifically for each commodity. I think each commodity has its own challenges. It may not be right to generalize, because as you said, there is storage capacity. Today we have storage capacity. One is that it is for potato, which is the largest crop we store. It is outdated technology. And so if you look at the cold chain for fruits and vegetables per se, I think we need to break this down into specific cold chains or value chains for each commodity, see what is needed for that particular commodity, whether it needs maybe air freight. Like we've got the Krishi Udan scheme now announced by the government, because from Northeast, for example, the connectivity may just take too long. So we need to air freight it. We're talking about Kisan Rail now. So I think if we break this up into different commodities, where is the source point of the commodity, where is the end destination market, and then work out what is the ideal requirements for infrastructure, then we may be able to crack this puzzle. Like I know Tamil Nadu has done an excellent job for bananas, for example. Maharashtra is probably the highest crop that or highest fruit we export from India today is the grape, which is going from Maharashtra, from the Nasik region. So I think there are enough and more examples of people who have made a successful story of a viable cold chain, even exporting the product, if we specifically look at the need for that commodity. So
Yes.
again, to your point, we definitely need to upgrade some of the existing core storages. Maybe the statistics don't reflect the correct picture when we talk about what is the capacity available, because a lot of that may be specific to a certain crop. But we definitely need to look at this and solve the problem for each commodity. So, like we've seen, very successful cold chains, for example, for dairy. Dairy is, I think, one of the best examples of how we have successfully managed seamless flow of dairy products all across the country. So, similarly, we need to look at each commodity and then crack the supply chain or the cold chain issues for that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Pankaj. I think I'll now move to Krishna. Krishna is an expert in automation and controls, working with Danfoss, leads the regional hotspot business of Danfoss. Now, here we are talking about cold chain as the hotspot in the country. And I can tell you, in this COVID period, when most of the industries were affected, some even faced shutdowns and all that, this was one industry which was working. Of course, there were issues we faced for the operational part, but then this was functional all the time. The only problem was about the last mile delivery. Yeah, and I think Pankaj, you can also think about it as to, but later on maybe we can discuss this point as to what are the issues connected with the last mile delivery, especially in the zones which are restricted zones and all that. So we've been facing this problem in operating the cold chain also. So Krishna, I would suggest you to talk on this subject on the uh, yeah. Yeah, I'd just like to mention, this is my own experience. Today, we are in a world when actually there are controls to control the controls. You know? And when I started working in cold chain somewhere in 68, 69, most of our projects, a few of them, not large numbers and all that, we always had manual controls. And it was for the first time in 1973 that we had one electronic liquid level control used on an STU. Yeah, and today everyone uses electronic controls. So your industry has actually changed the face of this industry. Now today we have the IT sector. Today we have the IoT, we have the artificial intelligence, we have blockchain and some other softwares and all that. How do you think the applications of these programs going to affect or going to help our industry, especially in terms of quality, production values, and of course the export? That has to be our main aim and ambition. Yeah, this is one for you. And since I have another question for you, or topic for you, can you give any specific examples of the benefits of the technologies applied for land-based plants, road transport, and marine transport? Are you, do you have some programs for these kind of applications? Please.
Sure, sir. Thank you, Arvind sir. It's actually great to be on a panel along with you, along with Pankaj and Satish on this very important topic. And I think, as always, REFCOLD and ISHRAE choose extremely important topics which are forward-looking from an industry point of view. Now, just listening to both you and Pankaj, I think I fully agree in terms of the role that agriculture, horticulture, and allied sectors like dairy and fisheries are going to play as we move into a post-COVID world. And obviously, what we have seen in the last 3 months in terms of the economy is that agriculture has been the one sector that has held itself while all the other sectors have found it difficult. And for obvious reasons, that food is something very critical. But what we have also seen from a consumer point of view is that while the food supply chain was made intact and food was made available to the consumer was increasingly concerned about the safety of the food that was coming to him, either from a retail store or from various means. And he was very particular to know about how safe is the food and what are the aspects that he should look at, whether he should clean the food, whether he should wash the food, whether he should put this food in the sun for a few hours before he consumes it. Basically, safety became very important from the consumer point of view. And he was just not satisfied with getting food into his house, but he wanted to be sure that the food that comes onto his table is safe for consumption. And I think why I brought this point up is the aspects that you brought in from an IoT, blockchain, AI kind of aspects play a very important role as we look at it from the food supply chain, because one aspect is establishing the cold supply chain network in the country. But what also happens is in the cold supply chain, each business stakeholder who is there in the supply chain where there are various stakeholders, each of them maintains their own system of records. And due to this, what happens is there is a trust deficiency that comes in between the stakeholders, because you are not able to have a single view of the records. And the current processes that are there are not tamper-proof, let us put it that way. And there is scope for one stakeholder to take care of his interests. There is a possibility that he could tamper with whatever data points are there. But what aspects like IoT, fleet management with integrated supply chain and blockchain brings in is, it brings in a distributed ledger into the whole aspect of things. And when you look at blockchain as an aspect has attracted a lot of interest from the finance industry domain. I mean, they are the ones who have been using it. But of late, we see that the blockchain is increasingly being proposed as a solution for other sectors, which includes aspects like supply chain and healthcare as well, where we are talking of a COVID vaccine, which needs a integrated cold chain network. Now, what we do see is that because there are different parties involved in the cold chain, and the shipments can pass through many hands, a blockchain with a distributed ledger kind of a aspect will, with aspects like RFID tags, sensors, SCADA systems, and which are integrated with the products that are there in the cold chain, will provide real-time information to all the stakeholders. So each stakeholder will be able to see what is happening with the produce as it moves through the different stages of the chain. It will also bring in a lot of transparency into that entire chain. People will be able to also understand which location their product is currently there, what is the speed of transportation that it is taking place, when can I have my product at my particular place. And when the consumer finally gets it in his hand, he will be able to go through the entire chain as to, okay, where was this produced? Which all stages did it go through before it came to me? and he will be more than confident that, okay, this is a produce that I can consume. And this will help a lot, not only from an Indian demand perspective, but also in terms of exports, where the export market is looking for such kind of protocols, where they clearly want to know how well this product is and how safe and healthy it is for me to consume this product. So from that angle, I think blockchain and IoT enabled technologies will help the industry to move in the right direction. Because even let's assume that one of the nodes crashes, but because it is a distributed ledger, it would not bring the entire structure down, and we will still be able to see what is the monitoring happening, what is happening, and then the increasing trust will be placed. So I mean, I would put that as the first part of the question that you asked. In terms of the second part about what Danfoss is doing within this aspect, we are already working on some live models across different parts of the globe on this. There is a solution that we have brought to the fore, which is called as Danfoss Prosa web portal, where you can have a set of web intuitive dashboards on your screen, and you don't need very sophisticated infrastructure for this. It can be seen on your desktop or even on your mobile or iPad, where it could be a single cold room, or you can have an overview of all the cold rooms that you have. You can have multiple filtering options in terms of what exactly you want to view. Let's say you want to only view what is the temperature of a particular place in different cold rooms. You can view that. You can also view what is the status of the alarms that are there in various aspects. You can look at aspects of the full fault history. It will help you in preventive maintenance of all your processing facilities, production facilities. You can also bring down reports like HACCP reports, which are very critical when you look at it from an export point of view. So we are working on such solutions that are there. In terms of a live example, one aspect that I can bring you is we did a project on the border of Denmark and Germany about 2-3 years ago, where the entire cold storage was fully automated, in the sense that you don't need a single manpower to do the running and maintenance of the cold storage. However, the contractor was a little skeptical, so he put one resource there because he said in case something happens, we need someone there. But over the last 2 years, this resource is sitting idle there because everything is being monitored from a remote location, and there is no need for anyone to look at it from a monitoring point of view. Only when there is maintenance, which again the alarm comes to you on your tablet or laptop, you go and do the maintenance. So that's the kind of progress that IoT and AI is bringing into the technology. And we will have to look at adopting those kind of technologies into our systems, because that's the kind of demand that will come in from a consumer's point of view for us. I hope I have answered your question.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. A lot of addition to my knowledge, at least. Well, because we have been hearing these words, all the time. We are not the people of my stage. We are not the people to know in details these technologies. But we know that there are good applications, and as you explained, we are also doing something in this. What do you think? What kind of a technology is suitable for under Indian conditions? For example, take the case of a pack house, where there are manual lines and there are automated lines and all that. So, and now the post-COVID situation has turned this scenario also, and there are issues like the healthcare and the sanitary requirements, and other safety requirements and all that. So, do you have anything which you can suggest? For example, a simple pack house located near a cluster of villages. How could they automize themselves? How could they get the benefit of your work in this field?
Well, it's an excellent question, sir. See, the way we can look at it is from an Indian point of view, IT is not something new for India. India has the IT capabilities. So from an IT capability point of view, there is no challenge that India has. The challenge is in terms of marrying the IT capabilities that we have with the farm and agriculture sector. And how do you bring in that skill set that we have in the information technology sector into the farm sector? Because these are technologies which, like I said, have been increasingly used in the finance domain, even in India. Now we'll have to look at how do we adapt this into a farm gate infrastructure and put those kind of sensors and capabilities in there. And this has already been done, like what Pankaj mentioned, the grapes in Nashik are being exported. And when they are exporting these grapes, you can see examples in Nashik where you can, looking at scanning the code that is there on the package of the grapes, you can see from which farm it has been grown. So the technology, there are pilot examples that are there in India. What we need is we need to look at which, rather than combining everything under one whole sector as perishables, we need to look at which are the specific vegetables or fruits that we want to increase our share in the global market, and pick protocols for those respective ones. Do we have Arvind sir? I can't see him on the screen actually. I believe we have lost Arvind sir.
Hello, yeah, Mr. Arvind has just logged out from the meeting.
Yeah, so let's get him back and
an alternative could be Nilanjana, if you want to continue the discussion until.
Yes, I think let's continue with the discussions, and since it's online, we have to bear with some of the glitches, and let's not interrupt the panel that's going through. Krishna sir, let's continue with the discussions that we were going through.
yeah, so that would be the answer to what Mr. Arvind Surange sir asked in terms of deployment of technologies within the country. So we'll have to pick and choose which are the sectors we'll have to look at, and maybe have more and more pilots. Cooperatives and FPOs are the way forward that we are seeing, and the government seems to be moving in the right direction, both in terms of amending the acts that they have done, as also bringing in some amount of stimulus packages. What's important would be to look at it from an implementation point of view as to how do we implement these both the solutions as well as the regulations that the government has brought in. How do we implement these changes?
I think very correctly pointed out, Krishna sir, and I was particularly amazed when you said, you know, the advancements of AI and IoT in the cold storage and how it has helped to, you know, sort of take this industry into the advanced leagues is something that I was also, you know, very amazed here. Sir, Satish sir, you are with the seafoods, and I think seafood. I am from Kolkata, so you know my affinity towards fish knows no bounds, and that again, prawn being my favorite. So, sir, please throw some light on how the cold storage sector in your business has been impacted with these latest advanced technologies, and how do you see that it is going to be taken forward, and what is the future there, sir?
So first of all, I think both Krishna sir and Pankaj sir have given a great segue for me to talk about my industry, the marine exports. I think when Pankaj sir said it has to be commodity specific, and I think Krishna sir was alluding to some of that, right? So, so let me talk about my industry. First of all, thank you all for the opportunity. I think it is an honor for me to be part of this discussion with all of you esteemed colleagues. I will correct your introduction about me, Nilanjan, a little bit. I'm no industry doyen. I've been with this industry for about a couple of years now. Joined Nekkanti about 2 years, so 2 years ago. I do have the benefit of having seen cold chain or advances in cold chain in the US, having spent about 4 years there with Grupo Bimbo, one of the largest bread companies on the planet. Okay, and coming to Nekkanti, let me set a little bit context for where my insights and my opinions come in. Nekkanti is Seafoods is about a 35-year-old company primarily focused on shrimp exports. But I think that's okay. I mean, I can speak for the whole marine industry because shrimp actually constitutes about maybe more than 50% of our exports from a quantity standpoint and more than 70 to 75% from a value standpoint. So when I speak about shrimp, I think I'm speaking a little bit about the marine industry, and I'll try to address the other species as well. And there's also a little bit added, I'd say, bias in my opinions, maybe, because at Nekkanti, we have been relatively fortunate. We do about 20,000 tons of exports every year over the last 2 to 3 years. And we have in-house cold storage capacity of about 3,500, 4,000 tons. So relatively, when you look at our cycle of from the farm to shipment of about 10 to 15 days, I think we are relatively okay there from cold storage standpoint, but we do have our own set of issues that I'll speak to. To give you a little bit, very high level overview of total, the importance of marine exports, right? Some numbers, I'll throw out some numbers there. I think the exports last year have been about $7 billion or about 13 lakh metric tons from India to various countries. I think the primary exports are to USA, China, EU, Japan, and a few other countries rounding up. And like I said before, shrimp constitutes about 75%, 73 to 75% from a value standpoint. The remaining comes from fish and a few other smaller species, if you will. The good thing about the overall shrimp industry is that we have seen significant, a very rapid growth over the past 5 years, primarily driven by the advent of a new species. And last year, we've seen growth of about 6 to 7%, both from a value and quantity standpoint. Maybe we helped a little bit stem the downside that we've seen in fish and some other areas. Okay. So when I talk about the industry in general, right, I think there are some generic challenges, whether it's fish or shrimp or any of the species. And I'm not mentioning this in any particular order of relevance. If you look at it, we have some issues on how we are managing the cold chain from a post-harvest operations, what we are able to do there or what we are not able to do there because of lack of infrastructure or other opportunities. Also, from a fish standpoint, I think we have seen a decline in fish catch, some of it attributable to the depletion of the species itself, but more of it due to, let's say, less technology or less scientific approach to fishing, if you will. And there's a few other challenges wherein we don't have focus on a lot of species that we can grow, but we are not necessarily handling today. And even if I reflect on shrimp industry, the growth has primarily been driven by one species, which is Vanamai. Now, coming to the challenges that are facing our industry, let me break that down into 3 areas, right? So I'll first talk about the area of the source of the product to the time it arrives into our processing plants. Then I'll talk about some of the issues that we face in our very own processing plants. By no means are we perfect just because the industry is growing. Then I'll talk a little bit about what are the challenges we face when we try to take the product from our processing plant to the customer, whether it's some of it a little bit domestic, a lot of it is exports. And just to give you a context, I think out of all of the product that we make, I think 98 or 99% of it is exported. So we do very little domestic business. We do have, let's say, a sister or a very small new venture that is trying to handle domestic, but I'll keep the context and the insights to exports because that's what we're going to talk about here today. So in terms of looking at from the source to the processing plants, right, I'd primarily say the challenges are in 2 areas. One is the lack of the cold chain infrastructure. And the second one is the lack of, I think Pankaj sir can attest to some of it, lack of, let's say, efficient and cheap transportation of the product from the RM source to the processing area. So when you look at sea catch, right? I mean, a lot of our fishermen it is a very highly unorganized sector, and you don't have any, let's say, billionaire fishermen or, I mean, even multimillionaire fishermen as you see in more advanced economies like Norway, Canada, and other areas, right? So a lot of small fishermen going out with their small boats and trying to catch the fish. So they bring back the fish, and then they're kind of in a situation where how fast can they refrigerate some of the product so that they can preserve the freshness. And once they reach the jetties or the shipping docks, right, the fishing docks, they don't have readily available infrastructure, whether it's ice plants or whether it's processing facilities and so on, that will help them, okay, at least immediately either ice the product or at least do some part of processing so that the freshness is preserved. So when you talk about a huge amount of food being wasted or being spoiled, you see some of the source of that right there. And the other thing that's a little bit negative that happens is because of the lack of this freezing and proper means to preserve freshness, they resort to unhygienic or I wouldn't say actually wrong practices where they use chemicals like formaldehyde and others to preserve the freshness, which in a way, I guess, undersells or undermines the value of the product completely. Now coming to, so I talked about sea catch. Now when you talk about freshwater, which is where we get 90 to 95% of our product from both from a shrimp and primarily from shrimp and a lot of it in the fish area as well. A lot of the marine aquaculture is concentrated along the eastern coastline, primarily in Andhra Pradesh, some of it in Tamil Nadu, Orissa, and maybe definitely in your state, Neelanjana, West Bengal as well. But now we are seeing farmers in Gujarat, Haryana, and some other areas also excited about the growth in shrimp industry and wanting to get into the area. Unfortunately, the challenge they face is having efficient and cold chain for transporting the product from Haryana or Gujarat to an area where majority of the processing plants are located, which is Andhra Pradesh. So by the time the product is loaded in Haryana and reaches our state, a lot of it is bound to spoil or you lose the integrity of the product, if you will, right? So, and not only that, but the cost of the transportation itself is pretty high. I think it's about 25 to 30 rupees per kg when you start to ship from Gujarat or Haryana to Andhra Pradesh and Orissa or Tamil Nadu. And when you talk about 200 to 250 kg product or 300 kg product, this is almost eating into 10 to 12% of your margin, right? So that's as well a big challenge there. Now, coming to the next area, which are the challenges. Sorry, was there a question, sir?
I think you seem to have given a kind of an overview of the fisheries industry in India. I know because I've been associated with that, those marine plants and all that, even about, say, 4 decades ago and all. And today also we are involved in some projects in this fisheries. So I want to know what is the current status of exports. Do you think that there is a very good potential for growth in our exports for the fisheries? Because we are supposed to have very good quality of fish. That is what the outsiders they say. So what do you think is the scope for development of exports, and what has to be done from the technology point of view, from the transport point of view, any improvements, any suggestions on that? Yeah.
Definitely. So in terms of the prospects for exports, I would say, I forget the word, whether it's elastic or inelastic, but the demand is out there. In the US, we have not, I know the pandemic has impacted some of the demand. To us, it's just a point of, okay, it's just a cycle, if you will, but the overall demand has not necessarily reached a new normal or anything. I think, in fact, we've seen our retail orders grow significantly and more than catching up with the downside that we've seen on the food service side. So definitely there is a lot of demand out there, but with the demand comes a greater requirement for and focus on areas like traceability, integrity of the food chain, quality of the product, and so on. I think this goes back to some of the things that Krishna sir had mentioned in terms of having continuous traceability of the product from when it is farmed to when it is actually going to the customer's plate, right? We are, I think, the MPEDA, the government bodies have taken some initiatives in terms of helping farmers with registrations, helping farmers with educating them on better practices and so on, and helping with that traceability. But there is definitely room for newer technologies like RFID tags or Bluetooth and so on to help with this aspect as well. Looking at our own organization, right? I think we are dabbling with some of these newer technologies in our cold stores where we are where customers are asking us for, hey, I need the temperature on a minute by minute basis from when you have finished processing the product to when it reaches me. So we are trying to use RFID not just to track from an inventory and our inventory accuracy standpoint, but also to be able to cater to customers' demands for temperature monitoring and so on.
Okay, thank you. I think the time has come to come back to Pankaj on this couple of points which I would request him to give his views on. The scenario in multimodal reefer transport, and how shall we handle the challenge of the distribution of COVID vaccine, because we'll have a very short time and the large quantities to be distributed. So what is your take on it?
Yeah, thank you, sir. So I think this is your question has come right at the as an answer to Satish's query on cost of cold chain transportation, especially for seafood. If you ask me, now it's an irony that seafood has to travel by road. So I mean, we have such an excellent coastline. We have so many waterways today available in the country, which are not used as freight lines. So and there are so many areas of the country which are not touched. Because of this, there's a demand, as Satish mentioned. There's a demand for exports, and I'm sure Nilanjana would like to see some of Nekkanti prawns and shrimps going to Calcutta. So, and if you ask me today, a market like Delhi is asking for more fish and more seafood. There is so much of health benefits today associated with consuming more seafood rather than other non-vegetarian items. So there is a huge demand, I think. What we need to crack is the cost. And I think one of the simplest ways of cracking the cost of cold chain is to explore opportunities in multimodal, cold chain. If you see all the large geographies in the world, Australia, North America, other parts, they use intermodal containers, they use sea containers, they use a lot of rail, definitely. So there's a huge opportunity. There is a little bit of movement. So Kisan Rail is a definite positive that has started. Krishi Udan, the start of the waterway from Varanasi again was a initiative in the right direction. So I think there are positive steps happening there, and we should definitely see more of cold chain also using these multimodal opportunities as we go along. Now, to answer your second question on the vaccine, which is an opportunity coming up, it's an opportunity and a big challenge. I think certainly the scale of the distribution that is required. See, today, vaccination in India is done primarily for children and for young mothers. We don't vaccinate any adults today in India. I mean, not to that extent. So if you look at vaccinating 1.3 billion people in India, I think it's the scale is just multifold, and the challenges and the detailing required. So, and obviously cold chain would definitely play a very critical part in maintaining the efficacy of the vaccine, maintaining it reaches the far and wide villages and the small towns in the right condition. So I think it's a huge exercise. I'm sure there is a expert panel which is working on the details. There is obviously the question of whether the infrastructure today is sufficient, whether the cold storages, the reefer trucks will be able to handle that kind of additional load. So I think these are very important, pertinent questions, which obviously, people need to see based on the timeline. I mean, obviously all the vaccine is not going to be available to everybody at one shot, right? It has to be in a phase wise. There has to be a certain planning, there has to be tracking, tracing, and then looking at what are the cold chain infrastructure which is needed for that phase at that time in that region of the country. So I think this requires obviously a lot of planning and a lot of detailing into how this is done. And one more point I would like to bring to Krishna's point on, traceability, IoT. I think that could not have been more important than at the time of the vaccine distribution. I think the need for temperature compliance, the need for traceability of the vaccine, the need to maintain real-time data of what is happening, who's getting inoculated, and so there's a huge amount of IT and IoT that will obviously be required in this whole exercise of the vaccine distribution. So I think it's a very it's a challenge that needs to be addressed by the cold chain infrastructure, the planning, and also the IT part and the controls that Krishna mentioned. So I think agri space definitely needs the IT and the IoT linkages, but I think something like vaccine distribution or the pharma sector definitely needs it so much more. So with that, I think I have answered the question. I think we are also running tight on schedule. So I think there is some problem with Mr. Surange's connectivity. So let me ask Krishna for any closing comments before we, ask the audience for some questions. Krishna, anything from your side?
Yeah, thanks, Pankaj. I think using the multimodal and the why seafood should travel through road is a good question, especially for us who have a past of working in the Navy. It definitely makes a lot of sense to use water as a transportation. See, one other aspect that I think we should also look into when we talk about cold chain is in terms of existing infrastructure that we have, an aspect where we have a lot of cold storages that are already established, be it dairy, be it fisheries, be it food processing and all of this. And a good aspect to this is that a lot of these plants have been based on ammonia, because ammonia is a natural refrigerant and it is an extremely climate friendly refrigerant. But why I brought this up is an aspect with ammonia that comes in is that it is also a toxic refrigerant, which means that we need to take care of safety. And especially post-COVID, one aspect that each of us have come to know is that safety is not someone else's baby, it is each individual's responsibility. We invariably come to believe that, okay, safety means that the designer or the consultant needs to take care that it is safely designed, or the manufacturer should take place that his products are safely produced. But it doesn't end with that. And every individual, be it an operator, be it a technician, be it a managing director, needs to play a role in this safety. And what ammonia brings in is that if we use the refrigerant in a very safe way, it is the best refrigerant that we can use. And from a stakeholders point of view, where ISHRAE, industry, government, BIS, all of us have played a role, is that there is a new standard for ammonia that has brought into place, and just 2 days before it has been approved by the government as a safety standard for ammonia plants. So where I do see value is that we need to adopt the standard. be it Danfoss as an industry, be it a consultant, be it a end user, which could be a fish processing plant or a food processing industry. All of us need to adopt the standard and cascade the standard to everyone. So everyone makes safety a priority for them. And I do believe that forums like this and probably ISHRAE can also play a larger role to, in addition to developing the standard, is that maybe an easy to read handbook could be prepared where it could be easier for a technician to know, okay, this is a valve that is there. When do I open it? When do I close it? How do I open it and how? Because that's also one of the reasons why we have seen some accidents happening, where it's not because ammonia is toxic, but it is more to do with the skill of the technician or someone who is not using it properly. So since now we have a standard in place, it makes sense to deploy the standard to a larger population so that they can understand how they can be safe while operating this. I think that's a point that I thought is useful for the industry to adopt.
Very nice. Explained it very well. We have time now to continue. We have.
I'll just add.
Yeah. Switch to the audience questions.
Just, I think Satish needs to make a point. Satish, please.
Make one last point very quick.
Yeah.
I think we talked a lot about new infrastructure and new technology, and Krishna sir was going to mention about existing one. What I've noticed is there's a lot of efficiencies left out there because of the existing infrastructure, whether it's the cold stores or the condition of the containers or what we use for shipping and so on, because it's primarily lack of knowledge. I think I can speak for seafoods where it's homegrown knowledge, where we think we are the best experts in how to maintain our cold stores, and we're not even close. So I think there's definitely something that can be done there, improving the efficiencies and energy management and usage of space, design of cold storage, etc., for the existing infrastructure as well.
Satish, just as a last point, I would like to ask you, see, there's also a lot of government focus on the blue economy. I mean, fisheries is one of the priority sectors today, and there's a lot of reforms. As we've heard about the agri reforms, there's also a lot of reforms on the fishery side of FPOs, consolidation, port infrastructure. Where do you see the fisheries industry and adoption of good cold chain practices going forward?
I think you're right in that there has been significant focus both from the government side as well as the industry, from the industry associations. There has been, I think, 414 to 1500 crores earmarked for development of that cold store infrastructure specific to fisheries industry. So I think Krishna sir was earlier mentioning about the implementation of this. So I think it comes down to how well that is implemented. Now coming to our own, so that's from the government side, right? But from our own side, the industry side, there is definitely room, but the industry has been running so fast in the past 5 to 6 years. I think a cold store is a cold store. I think for the rest of the, let's say, commodities, maybe they are looking at a cold store as a significant investment, and let's say they're looking at it to be profitable, right? But for us, I think a cold store is an additional benefit or an additional thing that we need to do as part of our overall investment in new production lines and so on. So, so we're not as much focused on, hey, how well can I run this cold store versus I need cold store space, right? So there is, so the bottom line, there is a lot of room there for improvement, and we are just starting to look at that with some of the examples that I mentioned earlier within Nekkanti.
Right. Thank you so much. Rohan, I think we can end.
Thank you, Satish. Any other questions you have in the audience? I just want to have to ask Satish whether there are any schemes for modernizing the old fisheries plant, because there are many of them working in the country. Are there any special schemes, any incentives offered by the government?
Unfortunately, there are no schemes per se to modernize a specific area of the old plants. if we were to implement or bring in some production capability that is value added as opposed to purely processing shrimp. For example, if I were to add a cooking line, cooking of shrimp to an existing facility, then I could, as part of that additional added product requirement, improve my cold storage facilities, improve my raw material receiving facilities, etc. That the government gives subsidy for. But if I'm just purely asking for, hey, this is an existing plant, I'm going to produce the same product tomorrow, but I need to improve efficiencies and modernize this, there is no scheme today.
Thank you. I think I must apologize for the interruptions that are happening. It's something beyond our control. So suddenly the net goes and then it comes back and all. I mean, this is an example of what we should avoid in the cold chain, because cold chain has to go uninterrupted. Yeah, because this just cannot be allowed. The entire from the production to the consumer.
But Arvind sir, the last point that you brought in is extremely important, because when you look at a lot of existing plants that are there, be it fishery, be it dairy, be it a whole lot of other plants which are at least 2 decades old, and there is a lot of modernization that needs to be done, because the technological advancements that have happened in the last 2 decades are immense. And the challenge that we see is on the cost of capital, because the owners are not willing to put that investment in. And they are looking at some kind of a methodology where they can get in, because they don't want to invest their excess cash flow into an existing plant, which will only bring in energy efficiency, and probably it helps in their bottom line, but they want to invest in something which increases their top line. And this business model innovation is something that is definitely a need of the hour, and we need to see how that brings in, whether government comes in with some schemes or there is some other methodology that comes in, but that's extremely vital. I mean, the point that you brought in is an important thing for the industry to address.
True. So do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes, I think, sir, we have a lot of questions from the audience, and they are also waiting eagerly to talk to the panelists. We will switch over to the other Zoom link that has been posted on the chat box for answering the audience question. I think we have quite a lot of questions. In the interest of time, we would be taking up a few. And I would, in the meantime, if the audience has any other final remarks or questions, you can put it over there. And I think we've had a wonderful panel discussion today, and the glitches were very minor part of it, and we discussed at length about everything. And Pankaj sir, Krishna sir, Satish sir, your insights into the industry from different perspectives, I think has been very enriching for me, being the second generation entrepreneur, also very new to the industry. And Arvind sir, of course, on many occasions, I've had the pleasure of listening to you, and no adjectives are sufficient enough to fathom the depth of knowledge that you have on the subject. And of course, the brighter part was the prawns that I think everybody touched upon a little bit, and it was very enjoyable for me, and I think the audience also has enjoyed this topic. I think we touched everything. We touched AI, IoT, we touched the efficiency of cold chain, transport cold chain, and even we discussed COVID-19 vaccines, we discussed government schemes, upcoming industry technologies, and it's been very fruitful and enlightening, I'm sure, for the audience, and of course it has been for me and everybody else present. I thank all the panelists, and now we would finally go for the questions. And
yeah, just before we conclude the session, I would like to thank all the panelists. They are experts, and they have shared their knowledge and experience with us. So thank you all. Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Satish also. And my special thanks to Nilanjana also, because whenever there is an interruption, and especially when there was an interruption when the fisheries talk was going on, I was wondering who is going to take care of this, but who could be better option than Nilanjana, who knows fish better than we all do.
Thank you very much. I think we all did a teamwork.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.